Welcome to This Week in Guns, a podcast that covers the commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. Brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. I'm your host, Jake Challen from Gun Guy Radio, and you make this show possible. That's right, you simply click through our Amazon affiliate link the next time you're shopping online, and a small portion of your sale goes to supporting pro-gun radio like This Week in Guns. We have a great panel returning this week. We have Nate Murr from Reach Bang Clear and writer for magazines such as Recoil. Hey, Nate.
Hey, Jake. Thanks for having me back on.
And we have Billy Johnson from Admits the Noise. Hey, Billy.
Hey, Jake. How you doing, man?
Doing great. And we have John Patton, the Gun Collective and Patton Media Consulting. Hey, John.
Hi, Jake. How are you?
Do I really have to say how I am 3 times in a row?
No. We're gonna make you come up with something different. My question is, how tall are you?
6'1".
6'1". Jake is a lot taller in person than he looks on camera.
Why do I look tiny?
You are really tall in person, yeah. I think that's the first thing.
Put your camera a little lower, Jake. Put the camera angle a little lower, shooting up at you.
But then you'll see my double chin.
That definitely is an issue. I'm sorry.
Announcements. Bullpup Shoot 2015 here in Northern Illinois. Hope to see you guys there. We're going to have a Firearms Radio Network booth. So check out bullpupshoot.com for more info. That's going to be on September 19th out in Mount Carroll, Illinois. That's probably about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half from Chicagoland. So check it out, bullpupshoot.com. And Patriot Patch Company makes this episode of This Week in Guns possible, patriotpatch.co, where you can pre-order the Huckleberry patch and also the Firearms Radio Network t-shirts, patriotpatch.co. Top stories this week. Afghan intelligence confirms the death of Taliban leader Mullah Omar. Did I butcher that name, Nate?
It's okay, you're allowed to butcher that name.
Yeah. This is the famed, one-eyed Taliban leader who's been wanted since shortly after the 9/11 attacks, right?
That is correct.
$10 million bounty on his head. No one's going to collect it. Maybe the doctor, I guess.
See, like, I read the article, and to me it's a little confusing because I'm trying to figure out. So allegedly this guy died a couple years ago, and this is like final confirmation that he's dead. Am I reading this right? Is that like what you guys gathered from it?
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that nobody in the U.S. intelligence community knew that he's been dead. I mean, I think obviously people have probably known. I think what's really interesting, why is it coming out now? Why 2 years later?
Yeah, that doesn't. I mean, like, the guy was a player. I mean, he was somebody that was definitely important to the infrastructure of the Taliban and what the Taliban was to AQ. But you know, it's, to me, it's like I at first I'm like, I thought this guy was already dead. I thought I had caught one of this before that he was dead. And reading the article, I mean, it goes on and explains like who this guy was and why it's a big deal. But it's also saying it's like this is more like Afghani intelligence confirms. Like, okay, I mean, not that I have a lot of faith in the Afghani intelligence, but like, why does that matter that the Afghanis confirm something that we've suspected for a while? But the thing about it, like, people look at, like, Taliban were centric to Afghanistan for the, the global war on terror, for the war in Afghanistan that started post 9/11, but AQ, like the Al-Qaeda, they're an international entity, right? And a lot of people also don't understand that, like, ISIS and ISIL is separate, or it's different than Al-Qaeda, right? The thing is that early war, a lot of the bad guys realized that there's no faster way to get the Americans to drop a JDAM on you than to use technology, as far as using the internet, email, text message, phone calls on phones. So their information grid kind of shut down. So what that created, I mean, it was a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, It was bad for us because it was harder to find these guys because they stopped using technology. But it was also a good thing because it made the dissemination of information from the hierarchy of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban to disseminate that information down to lower level guys. So it was kind of like one of those things where often you'd have it where you didn't know, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, or you would have elements of Al-Qaeda that would basically go rogue with no guidance, no instruction, and carry out missions that headquarters, so to speak, didn't sanction. So that's like one of the things right now with Syria and ISIS, the ISIL threat, is they're competing for personnel basically with Al-Qaeda. The Al-Qaeda and the extremist elements fighting in Syria right now, they're not one and the same, but the younger jihadists, they want to go to where the action is. So instead of being recruited by the AQ, they're being recruited by ISIL instead, and they're going to go fight where the fight is. So it's kind of good because it's like you have two extremely evil entities between Al-Qaeda and ISIL, and they're competing for jihadists, and they're fighting amongst themselves, which is a good thing. Moral of the story is, dude's dead. Thankfully, he's dead. We can all move on with the global war and terror, and hopefully more bad guys die in the future.
Amen. Moving on. Los Angeles gangs terrify community with kill contest. And we also have, you know what, I thought we had the story about, didn't LA ban high-capacity magazines as well?
Well, they banned the possession of the old ones because I think between, if you owned one before like 2001 or 2000, whatever the date was, you could keep it, right? Well, now they're banning the outright possession of those older high-capacity magazines. You technically haven't been able to buy one in California.
1994, right? Since the assault weapons ban, 1994, right?
It's been a long time. But there were always these like repair kits, right, where you could buy a repair kit to convert your 10-round magazine into a 30-round magazine. So those have kind of been prevalent for a while now. So technically they're banning the possession of those at the same time the gangs are saying they're going to kill 100 people in 100 days, which is, again, great because I'm sure gun control is going to stop those gangs. Those gangs are going to not use their 20 and 30-round magazines.
And just to be clear, that's just for LA County, right? That's what they were saying in the article, that the city of LA is putting a ban on possessing high-capacity magazines in any form, right? Regardless, regardless of what state law said about people that purchase magazines manufactured before the California ban. Like that's how I always understood it, is that when the assault weapons ban hit in September of 1994 and was lifted in September of 2004, that didn't change anything for California. Because I remember friends in California saying, like, hey, if you have any mags that are pre-94 ban, I'll buy them off you, because they're technically mags are allowed to have. They're pre-ban mags. I think New York's the same way. Like, you can have 30-round mags as long as they were made before the assault weapons ban. But so basically, it's one of those things where it goes back to my favorite thing, imaginary lines. So if you're outside LA city limits with a 30-round mag that's from 1993, you're not breaking any law in the state of California. But the second you step into the city of LA, if you get intercepted by a cop, now all of a sudden you're a bad guy. Now you're breaking the law.
Right, and I'm sure they'll just run that serial number on that magazine to verify that it was a pre-ban magazine, right? Oh, what? There's no serial number on those magazines?
So what we're basically saying is this is just another unenforceable BS law, yeah?
This is a feel-good law that is coming on the heels of the gang saying they're going to kill 100 people in 100 days. So
because stripping people of their rights is the way to get criminals to comply.
Right. So if you live in South Central right now, you should really feel comfortable that the LA City Council has stepped up to stop this gun violence.
Right, because they closed the loophole. It was a big.
I mean, if you think about it, like the cartel dudes and all the drug dealers, they're probably really upset because now they have to commit their illegal crimes with 10-round magazines.
Right.
They're like, man, we got to stay within the letter of the law here.
I mean, they can't access those websites. They can't access those websites that allow them to buy repair kits. This is really difficult for them to restock their magazines.
And they also have to get very proficient at using their bullet buttons and non-adjustable stocks and other things like that California is so smart and ahead of time, with...
The bullet button and the low cap magazine thing, that only applies to law-abiding citizens. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of those guys get their illegal firearms through Eric Holder and Fast and Furious anyway.
Well, and your handgun has to be on the approved California buy list, so I'm sure those criminals are checking that approved California buy list. I mean, they wouldn't want to be charged with any additional crimes.
Sarcasm so thick you can cut it with a knife. I like it.
This is coming from someone who bought his first firearm when he actually lived in Los Angeles County. So, but I wasn't as wise to all of the rules and regulations at that time as I am now.
Was it a musket?
It was a SIG 226.
Wow. Very cool. Gun control.
I will tell you a story off air about it.
Uh-oh.
No, I bought it legal at a gun store. Let's just make that clear.
I walked into a bar and Eric Holder was there, and Americans increasingly see more guns as the solution, not the problem.
Wait. So you're telling me all that anti-gun rhetoric is not working and not true?
That reason and logic is starting to prevail with the American people?
No, I don't believe it. First of all, that's reaching, Nate. Logic. In this case.
So this is
Washington. Propaganda.
This is a Washington Post article, and one of the statistics it pulls from is a Pew Research poll.
No laughing at the Pew reference?
Pew. Come on, I said it correctly, right?
No, that's right, but I'm saying it's funny that it's called the Pew reference, Everybody out there goes pew-pewing all the time.
So wait, it was a Pew Research poll, so it wasn't funded by Michael Bloomberg, because obviously that would have been a John Hopkins poll, since he funds everything out of John Hopkins. So Pew Research just did this poll on their own? Wow.
Apparently, twice. Once in 2012 and once in 2014. Americans that think guns can help prevent crime. So in 2012 it was 48%, but in 2014 it was 57%, so almost up 10% more people thinking that guns help prevent crime.
I'm surprised we didn't see a reference to the, the National Firearms Safety Board that we keep seeing doing surveys that are highly slanted. Those are great. Those are really great. What's interesting is immediately following the graph here in the article, it says the post-Newtown shift was most significant among Republicans whose support for gun ownership in the 2 years since the attack rose from 63% to 80%. So I think a lot of this is just people that were kind of on the fence. They're slightly right-wing or whatever. They identify as a Republican, and they're just going, they're confirming that belief.
Well, I think it's also important to remember that we're really up to date on the political gun control debate, but I'd say that most Americans aren't, right? Most Americans aren't informed about this, and so I think there's a lot more people on the fence than we realize, just because they might not be informed on the issues that like we are, and so there's a tremendous amount of people out there for us to pull over to the pro-Second Amendment side than we might think, just by paying attention to the media.
That's true. Like, if you think about we seek out the stories. I mean, like everybody here this evening, we seek out the stories, and I'm willing to venture a guess that our listeners, the people listening at home right now, they probably are more aware and looking for, Second Amendment relevant stories and the ongoing battle with gun control and the gun grabbers and everything else. But if you think about the blurbs that you see in the evening news, or the occasional article in like the Washington Post or whatever it might be, overwhelmingly the majority of what you do see in media is negative or portraying guns in a negative light or skewed facts or bad data or whatever it might be. So like even if the person, the casual observer, only sees one gun article every week, like if every week that one gun article they see, that one source they gain it from, it's in the negative, then over time I could see why they would be like, oh, guns are bad. You know, like somebody that doesn't really know much about guns or doesn't follow it. Or even, you know, for the guy that he owns a deer rifle and goes hunting every fall but doesn't really involve himself in the news or involve himself, you know, deeply in the Second Amendment community. What I'm saying, I guess I can see for the people that aren't out there looking for the truth, it's very easy for them to see everything as a negative because that's probably the information they're getting the most from the mainstream media, is that negative look on it, overview, whatever.
I totally agree, Nate, and it's one thing I always go back to when I see a negative article and I see friends of mine that aren't necessarily pro-gun or pro-Second Amendment say, we need to do something about this. I always preface that with, when was the last time you heard the media report that violence is at the lowest levels we've seen in this country since we've been keeping track, right?
Right,
like,
yeah.
Violence is down to 1950 levels right now. I mean, it's been cut in half. Gun violence, if you want to fracture that out, which I hate to do, but you know, the DOJ fractured that out in 2013 after Newtown. Their own report says non-fatal firearm-related crimes are down 70% over the last 20 years. And I always tell that to my friends, and they're like, that's insane. How come I've never heard about this? I'm like, well, maybe
There's a
you need
reason.
to ask that question more. Because it's amazing how many people don't know that.
Well, yeah, absolutely right. And if they're not purposely going out and, you know, luckily nowadays, you know, compared to 10 years, 15 years ago, you can actually find this information, you know, with new media and the way the internet's grown. But, you know, if we hadn't had this information, you know, revolution here, who knows what the country would, you know, would be like.
Yeah, we'd be passing around pamphlets.
Right, be like Thomas Paine. You know.
That's actually a really good point, Jake. I guess I never really thought much about that. Like, you know, the internet's like a double-edged sword that way, where it's a lot easier to find good data, like data from reputable sources, the DOJ information, the FBI studies, all that. But at the same time, there's also a lot of interference being thrown out along with that good data, or that you know, that data that we can trust. Now there's also everybody with a agenda and a blog, you know, is filling the internet with as much bad information, if not more bad information, than actually legitimate information. But, you know, we think about, like, back in the 90s, especially 1994, when the assault weapons ban passed, like, I remember that. You know, I was still a kid, but I remember the assault weapons ban passing September of 1994, and I'm like, man, I'm not grown up, and I don't have any money. I'll never be able to own all the cool guy guns that I want, you know? And every year after that, I watched magazines go up in price. I watched pre-ban firearms go up in price. I remember by the time the assault weapons ban expired, a beta mag, a C mag was like $900 for a 100-round drum magazine, right? A Glock magazine was like $90 for one magazine, you know, and it was like a police traded magazine. I mean, it was just crazy, and it was discouraging. And when, you know, I was surprised that it expired in 2004. But if you think about it, from 1994 to 2004, that 10-year span, how much technology changed across the board. The internet grew. You know, people started getting more active with the Second Amendment. I think that technology change, particularly with the internet, helped us pass information, and probably is one of the things staving off another bill like that passing.
Well, I think it's a big part of what brought the gun community from being a reactionary community to a proactive community.
Yeah, I mean, it allows us to band together and find people that, you know, are the same ilk, you know, on the same wavelength, and we can nip things in the bud before it becomes something a lot worse than it should.
Okay, so this week, MSNBC ran a poll, and you think MSNBC, the way they're slanted, they ran a poll. Do you think people should be allowed to carry guns in public? So, if you would have asked me, which way do you think that poll would have turned out? Would people say, yes, the Second Amendment guarantees it, or no, it's too dangerous, or only for self-defense?
I would have guessed, if you asked me that without me knowing, I would have guessed probably from that website it would have been closer to balance, maybe like 60 to 40% in favor of not carrying.
Here's what's funny. Between the first and the third, I don't see any difference. So, yes, people should be allowed to carry guns in public, and the third one was only for self-defense.
Well, that was my biggest surprise.
I'm like, what?
That's an open carry reference.
There's 2 pro-gun answers and 1 anti-gun answer, right?
Right. You think they would have stacked it with 2 anti-gun answers.
Or 10 anti-gun and 1
pro-gun. 10 anti-gun and 1 pro-gun. So I'm just kind of confused because, yes, I have a right to carry a gun in public for self-defense, and yes, I also just have a right to carry a gun in public.
Right.
So I want to quick point something out about this type of survey. So whenever these surveys get put out on MSNBC or whatever horrible news outlet, immediately following that, some gun guy puts it out on the internet, and the gun community goes bonkers.
No.
See that right. Well, here I'm going somewhere with this. I think that it's potential that MSNBC is playing the long game, and they're doing it because they know gun guys will do these polls, and they'll go, yes, 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 I support gun rights, just to get their website traffic up.
Well, let's think about this. Those guys that are going and voting on this poll aren't clicking on advertisement on MSNBC
I know
website.
that, and you
so
know
they're
that.
Clueless. And second of all, the person that's putting this poll out is probably like a 20-year-old intern in poli-sci at Berkeley. And, they probably don't know much about the gun community because if they were really smart, they could write a much more incendiary poll that would actually piss people off. Because when I look at that poll, I think it was written by a complete amateur that obviously didn't understand the rhetoric of polling. Just my 2 cents.
Well, my thing was I saw it shared numerous places throughout social media, right? I mean, I partook in that poll as well. When the first time I saw it, I'm like, oh no, here we go. Let's go over and take a look to see where it's at. And I fully expected it to be an overwhelmingly negative poll, considering especially the people that are true followers at MSNBC. But I was surprised to see where the poll was at when I took it, and then I think like a day or 2 later I checked back, and I'm like, yeah, like what John's saying, like we are, gun advocates, people that support the Second Amendment. We are quick to align, especially when it's something that we feel is something that's threatening us, or putting the Second Amendment in jeopardy, or anything that's going to limit more freedoms or more rights. So yeah, like we were all, like, overall firearms owners were quick to jump on that poll. I mean, I couldn't believe how many people were sharing that, and these are all pro Second Amendment people, like my friends on social media. But I know what you're saying there, Billy. I agree with you. If the person that poll wanted to be a little bit more sneaky about it, that they could have written it a little bit better. They could have written it in a way that they generated a lot more clicks. That's for sure. Or they could have written it in a way that it justified whatever they're trying to accomplish with their agenda too. Like,
I just don't think there's a lot of intelligence over at MSNBC, but that's just me.
I'm giving them a little too much credit, perhaps.
So 92% is where it's at right now. It says yes, the Second Amendment guarantees it, and that encompasses 300,000 34. Wait. 334,000 votes. There we go.
Well, you should look up the ratings that they get on their television show. That's far more votes than any of their shows get in television
Right.
ratings. So that should tell you something right there.
Right. Hasn't their viewership like fallen in half in the last couple of years?
They have shows that are getting like 20,000 people are watching it, which is really sad when it comes to cable news.
Well, speaking of something really sad.
Wait.
No?
Wait, so before we go on to this next article, I just want to say that for the longest time, for the last few years, I've been preaching about this, and I was right. I was right. Go ahead.
Really? Even before we get into it, you have to say that.
You damn right I have to say that. Timestamp it if you need to, but I was right. They're junk.
Taurus?
Agrees to $39 million settlement in defective pistol case. Settlement could include as many as 100,000 Taurus semi-autos.
The bad thing about this is not the first time in recent years that Taurus had a big lawsuit. A lot of countries try to buy firearms purchased from their own country. Like if you go over to Italy, you'll see a lot of Italian police and Italian soldiers walking around carrying Berettas. Right, it makes sense to support your local economy, your national economy. Well, in Brazil, it's the same way, where Taurus actually makes a lot of guns for the police forces and military down there, and they had this issue with whatever pistol they were providing to, I believe it was the Brazilian police, where the guns were going off without warning for like if you stared at it too hard, it would go off in the holster. So there was a massive recall, and it was a huge scandal. There's charges of all kinds of negative stuff going around it. That was, I wouldn't say it was private sector because it was for law enforcement and military, but this is international now here with this lawsuit.
Well,
because
sorry to interrupt. We covered that Brazilian recall on the show back in 2013. There was 98,000 Taurus 24/7s.
That was it. You remember? Yeah, that's the exact story, Jake. Yeah. How many again? How many pistols?
98,000. So they're the same ballpark number.
That's a small flaw. I mean, could have happened to anybody.
I love this. I love it. They're just garbage.
What they need to do, if they put a slight curve to their handgun, there might be less issues. There might be less problems. I'm saying.
A curve and a pants clip? Right? You need a curve and a pants clip, right?
So for the people out there listening, this actual settlement covers 9 Taurus models: the PT 111 Millennium, the 132 Millennium, 138 Millennium, 140 Millennium, 145 Millennium, 745 Millennium, 609, 640, and the PT 24/7.
Just a few, John.
So basically, all their top-selling pistols.
Right, all of which are terrible.
Well, wait. Didn't the NRA magazine give like the Millennial Pistol of the Year?
Ooh, somebody look at that.
Or 2 years ago. I think they did.
So basically, if you have to choose between a Taurus handgun for self-defense or a rock, you might want to choose a rock so it doesn't jam or explode in your hand.
Well, speaking of Beretta, you could probably go with their 92 FS clone, and you'd be okay.
That was my favorite Taurus. I'm like, this is like the one Taurus that I kind of like, and it's only because the safety is mounted on the frame and not on the slide like on the Beretta, because it's easy to accidentally engage the safety on the Beretta model.
So in 2011, Taurus, the 740 Taurus Slim, won the Golden Bullseye Award from the American Rifleman magazine, the NRA magazine, and they've got a few other, the Taurus Judge and this kind of other stuff.
You can be an accurate gun and still accidentally go off.
Yeah, that's true.
I was being sarcastic there.
Yeah,
true, right? I mean, you could be the most accurate gun in the world and still have a crappy safety.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between an accurate gun and a well-made gun.
So this settlement stems from a class action lawsuit brought by Chris Carter a Scott County, Iowa Sheriff's deputy who alleges his Taurus PT-140 Pro discharged when it dropped out of his holster during a pursuit.
First off, what kind of department is so broke? They're making their poor officers carry Tauruses.
Tauruses. What kind of holster was he?
Like, come on, man! Like, have a bake sale. We have a bake sale so we can buy some guns.
Suicide. I mean, come on.
To be honest, it was probably the Uncle Mike's holster that it fell out of. That was a real problem there. Court documents say the pistol had the safety engaged and the round was fired from the gun with the case remaining in the chamber.
Huh? That's strange.
So the safety. Here's probably what happened. I'm going out on a limb here. This is speculation. If the safety is engaged, the gun may be a physical safety, like it may be a slide stop, so they can't actually cycle. So if it did fire, it wouldn't eject the shell. Which, this is just, it's redeeming, it's sad, it's depressing in so many different ways. Apparently there was a settlement in Alabama when a man shot himself after his PT-111 dropped to the floor and discharged in 2009. They paid him $1.2 million.
Wow.
They had to sell a lot of guns to make up that.
Yeah.
Well, now they're going to have to sell a lot more.
Did you guys see the part in here that it's $9 million in attorney's fees?
Yeah, I saw that.
Wow.
And what was the settlement? 30-some million?
39 million. So 30 million to the owners and 9 million to the attorneys.
So I would like to see the stats from the ATF on how many pistols Taurus has sold into the U.S. I bet you'd. I mean, I don't think Taurus has really sold, honestly, that many pistols in the U.S., right? They're not entirely that popular of a firearm here. I'm curious to see how much of just a complete wash this is for them.
Well, I find it hard to believe. They say that each owner is potentially going to receive $150 to $200 for their gun. I call nonsense on that because with these types of settlement, these guys would be lucky if they see a dime. They might get a check for $2.50.
Right. It never makes it back to the consumer in these types of lawsuits.
It's a shame.
All right.
Buy American.
Yeah.
Buy American.
Marine brass endorses infantry plan to ditch the M16 for the M4.
Finally. Okay, so as a dude that started his Marine Corps career being issued an M16A2 with a 20-inch barrel, right? That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. And for people that don't really understand, like the M4 carbine is a more compact and a lighter weight version of America's legacy issue service rifle, the M16, right? So you have a 14.5-inch barrel, which is a hell of a lot more maneuverable when fighting in and out of vehicles or trying to do urban warfare, right? Going into houses. So that shorter barrel length makes a huge difference. And then also because we have more and more sound suppressors being issued, so that length of the sound suppressor builds out the over length of your weapon as well, which obviously further complicates things. But what is aggravating to me about this is that now after over 10 years of global war and terror, we could have done this change a very long time ago, and it could have had a lot of good. It could have made a lot of difference in the last 10 years. There was a thing a couple years ago, I forget, I think it might have been the Commandant or somebody else that said that the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps is a rifle service and will always be a rifle service, that we're never going to go to a carbine. And basically what it is a bunch of old officers that haven't carried a long gun in 20 years, not understanding that a carbine is a better weapon for fighting on the 21st century battlefield. So this is a big deal. This is great. The guns are in inventory. They're ready to be issued out to the Marines, and it's going to do good. The Marines are going to receive it well. Every Lance Corporal, every NCO, every staff NCO that actually carries a long gun in the battle is going to be happy with this decision. I guarantee it.
Nate, do you know who's making these guns for them?
I believe FN has the contract now.
Yep, they do. So
I didn't remember if that was for the Army or all branches.
Well, initially, FN got the contract for the M16A4, which was a modernized version of the M16A2 that we started fielding 2003 timeframe, and Colt maintained the M4 contract for a little bit after that, but they eventually lost the M4 contract as well. So they lost their bread and butter contracts. They lost the M16 and the M4 contract because they were producing absolute garbage and then sending that garbage to the American fighting man who's getting guns out of the box brand new that didn't work. So, I wasn't one to cry about Colt losing that contract because I was one of the people being issued subpar weapons made by Colt. So, FN's knocking it out of the park. Great company like it's always been. No complaints there.
Cool.
Now, if only the CMP could reissue the M16 to America's civilians.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, a third pinhole is going to keep them from doing that.
Don't worry about pinholes. Michigan officer shells out $35,000 for open carry stop. This happened, I think, around this last winter. I lost the date. Anyways, this Michigan officer, he stopped this guy that was walking down the road, legally open carrying his pistol, and arrested him. And because the officer had claimed that he had passed the guy 15 minutes earlier while responding to another call, and didn't see his gun at that time, but when he came back by, and this, I think it was all at night, came back by and hit him with his lights again, he saw the gun, and therefore he surmised that this gentleman must have illegally concealed his handgun the first time the officer drove by.
Wow.
So the cop arrested him and then charged him with a felony, but get this, they charged him with a felony 7 months after his arrest and only after he had filed civil charges of an improper arrest.
Yeah, that sounds like retribution.
Yeah.
That's disgraceful.
Yeah, isn't it? So
we should note that this was in Flint Township, which is notoriously a high crime area as far as Michigan goes, which doesn't excuse anything, but I find it interesting that the excuse for arresting the man was the fact that he assumed he was concealing it beforehand. That sounds like an after the fact of, oops, did I just arrest someone for illegally open carrying? Maybe I need to change my story and say that he was illegally concealing it beforehand. I mean, that sounds extremely shady, to me at least.
So it sounds like this guy, he won both he filed lawsuits both criminally and civilly against the police department and the officer, and it sounds like he won in both cases.
Maybe the officer was issued a Taurus and he was just jealous of the guy's gun. Maybe he had a nicer gun than the officer.
Could be. Michigan's not doing too well right now. Hard up for some cash. Do we want to talk about the lion-killing dentist?
No.
Yeah, I kind of like to jump over that.
Okay, Nate, take it away.
No, I don't want to talk about it. I want to jump over it. I want to bypass this story.
So hold on. Somebody that's watching this show, a buddy of mine named Corey, sent me a text, and he made a very good point. We were talking about that cop being issued a Taurus. He said there are a lot of departments in the U.S. where they have to buy their own guns, and that very well could be one of them. I thought that was a great point that we kind of missed on that one.
ATF reclassifies certain flares and 40 millimeter chalk rounds as explosives and begins confiscation.
Because, let's go ahead and further turn things that aren't what they actually are into something illegal, right? Let's do that.
Now, to be clear about this, this is only pertaining to 40 millimeter grenade launchers and not 37 millimeter grenade launchers. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly?
Well, it says there. One line here says a ruling could soon be expanded to include all ammunition bigger than half-inch in diameter.
Well, I tell you what, there's a lot of fireworks that are bigger than half-inch diameter that produce all sorts of flares and smoke. So, I mean, does that classify as well? I mean, what stops the ATF from regulating? I mean, they want to regulate 40 millimeter. I mean, what stops them from regulating
Well, the thing that's
fireworks?
strange, the thing that's strange about this is that I think I read this article and I read the same story on a different news source, and one of the two said that it pertained to 40 millimeter, right? So that means something that's important because 40 millimeter grenade launchers are actually grenade launchers, not flare launchers, right?
Yeah.
So it's a class 3 weapon. It's filed as a destructive device. So you can buy the same 203 grenade launcher you carry in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, or whatever. But the thing is, you're not going to be able to get high explosive dual-purpose grenades like you're issued. I mean, you can, but it's extremely expensive and extremely difficult. You have to have a bunker to keep the ammo in. There's all kinds of regulations. You gotta get I think you have to get your explosives license for it. Anyway, it's a huge pain in the butt. So most guys that buy the 203s or whatever grenade launcher, the old Vietnam-style thumper, maybe it's something they carry. They're nostalgic for it. They want to buy it. It's a class 3 weapon, so they do. Well, they're not going to get the grenades, the actual explosive ones, so they get these flares. They get the chalk rounds, which we call it. Chalk rounds are the training rounds. They're usually blue plastic tip. I think I have one dummy around here that's like that inert one. But anyway, like they're not lethal rounds. They're not explosive. They're just training rounds, So for something that's not an actual and explosive like a flare, or something that's not actually an explosive like the chalk rounds, for them to just randomly refile it as an explosive doesn't make any sense because there's no explosives in either one of those things. Now that's important because it's 40 millimeter, and those things aren't cheap. Like a 40 millimeter flare is like like $25 or $35. It's not something you're gonna go buy and shoot all the time, right? You can get a 37 millimeter flare launcher, like Spikes Tactical makes one. You go to gun shows and find them, and they're made smaller on purpose so you can't put 40 millimeter ammunition inside it. You can't, if you actually acquired a high explosive grenade somehow, you can't shoot it out. It won't fit. It won't chamber, right? But it's the same thing. They make flares and all kinds of different smoke rounds and stuff. So will they go after 40 millimeter, which is already regulated heavily by the ATF, and get that to go through with a little complaint so that they can clamp down on the 37 millimeter flare launchers next? Like, to me, this seems like, let's do this, death by 1,000 paper cuts. This goes small victory, small victory, small victory, so we can continue to limit rights. That's how I interpret this.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think that's been the strategy for a very long time, right?
Right.
We're going to nibble off a little bit at a time.
But coming at the heels of the last arbitrary decision, which was when they were threatening to ban M855 green tip ammunition, that wasn't that long ago. And remember how everybody got upset about that, and for good reason, because M855 is not armor-piercing ammunition. In fact, even in the American military, we do not view M855 green tip as armor-piercing ammunition. There's actually a separate round, which has a black tip on it, that's actually armor-piercing, and you'll never be issued it because it's crazy expensive, and it's almost pointless anyway because it's only a 5.56. It doesn't have the mass to really penetrate. But why all of a sudden, it's these strange things the ATF is going after.
Well, our government has this fixation with trying to redefine things, right? We want to redefine everything. Let's change the definition of transparency, right?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they want to change the definition of everything. So nothing shocks me anymore, especially with the ATF on wanting to redefine everything.
Weren't there these people, like in the book 1984? Wasn't there like a whole fleet of people that was their exact job, was redefining things and zeroing out old words and giving old words new meaning? I'm just saying, it's a control measure like anything else. That was used to illustrate the oppressive government in that a fictitious book in 1984. But to me, it's it's almost like you're starting to see those things come to fruition in real life in our own country. It's
Right, and then
aggravating.
eventually we all become criminals because we're all violating some obscure law in some way, shape, or form because everything's been redefined. So, I mean, I think it's, yeah, it is. It's an interesting aspect of controlling populations.
Maine police stand by during murders and arson. We are to the shootings and outbreaks section of the show. We're going to cover a few of these and then get to the full auto news. So this story is pretty disturbing. This happened up in northern Maine, where Brittany Irish, on Wednesday, July 14th, she was kidnapped, assaulted, and raped by a man, and she escaped and informed the police as to what happened. She pressed criminal charges alleging those acts when she did, and the police did not apprehend the suspect. Instead, they gave him a phone call to inform him that criminal charges had been filed. And so what does he do? He drives to this lady's mother's home, sets fire to her barn, burns it down. The Maine State Police arrive, tell the mother they can't help her and they won't post a trooper on the residence to protect her. And then shortly after that, the lady Brittany that was raped, her boyfriend arrived at her mother's house to see if they were all right. They stayed the night. The next morning at approximately 5:15 a.m., the alleged rapist and kidnapper blows open the door of the house with a stolen firearm. Kyle, Brittany's boyfriend and father to their child, is shot down in cold blood as he's trying to get the family to safety. Brittany was also shot and kidnapped a second time. And then it gives a breakdown from a television report here that this guy, escapes again. He shoots another guy. A police officer spots the suspect in a stolen truck, then loses him. After that is when the second gentleman is shot by this dirtbag, and then Maine State Police finally arrest the killer at his home, or at the home of his uncle.
What a tragic story.
I mean, it's almost sounds so hard to believe. The story sounds insane. Sounds like it's right out of Hollywood.
Like, there's so many failures in this story. There's like so much incompetence. Like, this was avoidable. I mean, maybe on the front end. I mean, we can sit here Monday morning quarterback the first part of the story about like the initial abduction and rape and everything, but the second time the guy came back, the time when he came back and murdered all these people, that was definitely avoidable in a lot of different ways. I can't believe that the police wouldn't provide protection, especially when they were in fear. But I mean, it kind of goes back to the whole thing that we're all personally responsible for our own protection. It's not the job of a police officer to protect you. He carries a gun to protect himself. He doesn't carry a gun to protect you. But still, even with that being said, I can't believe that they didn't provide that young woman some sort of support.
Where was this in Maine? Did the article say?
It said northern Maine. I'm not seeing a town right now.
So way up in the cut.
Yeah, I mean they're not. I mean they might have been extremely rural.
Not have the assets, not have the manpower.
Right. I mean it's, it just goes back to, calling 911. I mean you can't rely on the state to protect you. First of all, it's not the job of the state to protect you, but there's this false sense of safety I think a lot of people have, and I find that weird to believe though in northern Maine. I mean you're talking a really rural area where people predominantly probably hunt and own firearms. The second time the guy came in the house, I mean after he, the woman had already been kidnapped. I mean did they not have any means to protect themselves? I mean there's just some things that seem a little odd to me, because surely if someone in my family was kidnapped and got away, and I would surely do everything in my power to try to protect them or get away. I mean, whether or not these people didn't have the resources or not, there's obviously some things missing from the article, and it's tragic. I mean, it's tragic in any way you look at it.
With self-defense, though, I mean, it's not just about having the means, as in owning a firearm. It's also having the resolve, having the mindset. Like, they could have had a gun cabinet full of guns, but if it was down in the basement or upstairs in the study locked, when that dude,
Right.
basically forced entry, then, a loaded gun 20 feet away, it might as well be 7,000 miles away at that point. You're not going to get to it before the dude shoots you. Like I said, I'm interested to see how this article plays out and what details come from it.
Who in their right mind, though, after their girlfriend or wife had just been kidnapped, would have had their gun locked up in a safe? I surely hope one.
What I'm saying, there's still a lot of firearms owners that still don't view firearms as weapons. They view them as things that they use to kill deer. Like, my father doesn't own a handgun. My dad purely owns firearms for sporting purposes. He doesn't think that there's any point in carrying a handgun or owning a handgun, which is beyond me. But if if somebody was to go burglarize my dad, I don't know how that would work out. I don't know how it would work out for my father.
There are a lot of guys that are the same age as our parents, and they're in their 50s and 60s that grew up in a different United States than we live in right now. I talked about on the show not that long ago how I actually had a conversation with my dad, and he said, the world has changed, and it kind of hit him. He was like taken back by some stuff that had happened to one of his coworkers, and I said, this is exactly why I carry a gun all the time,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you put a fire out if you don't have a fire extinguisher? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have the tool at hand when you need it, then it doesn't matter that you own it or that it's in your glove box or it's in your sock drawer. If it's not on your person, then it might as well be 1,000 miles away. So I'm saying, like, maybe the family was. I really, really don't want to Monday morning quarterback this tragedy because I don't have all the information, but. I'm sure the family was an emotional wreck in the aftermath. They're probably more worried about, giving their daughter counsel than busting out the shotgun and getting it loaded up. I don't know. We don't know collectively the details yet.
So this was in Benedicta, Maine, which looks to be just an hour or so from the Canadian border, northern Maine, pretty rural.
Yeah, that is really, really in the cut up there.
So, pretty unfortunate, but it goes to show that, you really need to have, that fire extinguisher or loaded gun at your disposal because it doesn't do you any good otherwise. Thug burglarizes church, pastor pulls out blaster. So Benny Holmes, a pastor at New Beginnings Church in Bayton, Texas, was apparently napping in his office when he was awakened by a disturbance, and it turned out to be the sound of Lee Marvin Blue, and yes, Blue is his real name, breaking into the church and stealing electronics. The pastor confronted him, and he was carrying a large box filled with electronics out of the church, and apparently Blue made some sudden gestures, and the pastor shot him in the shoulder, and I think he held him for police. Most interesting part of the story, though, is this is not the first time that Pastor Benny Holmes has helped out law enforcement. He planned his own sting operation in September to catch a thief who was stealing packages off of porches in his neighborhood. He called Laura Ferguson, 52, and held her at gunpoint until police arrived, and then they found a stockpile of 30 stolen items at the woman's house. That was pretty cool.
This guy sounds pretty cool.
He's the president of the Neighborhood Watch.
So I like to think he open carries when he's giving his sermons. That's some like Wild West preacher type stuff right there. That's cool.
the perpetrator in this case. So I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with late '90s rappers such as the what is it, Master P and all those types, the Birdman, and anyway, I'm probably dating myself to the younger crowd. Anyway, this guy looks a lot like that. He's posing in his mugshot like he just won the lottery. He looks very content with himself for robbing a church.
But the thing is, like, look at it like this: like the guy, he's a man of the cloth. You know, he's a religious leader, and you know, it's hard to get more devout in your faith than being a pastor of a church. But it's a man that still recognizes there's evil in this world, and he gave himself the means to fight evil when it prevents itself. You know, like think about what kind of low scumbag you have to be to go rob a church, right? That's like that's up there with the lowest crimes, you know, theft that you can do. Good on the guy.
It's pretty low. I just saw the video of the guy that in a hair salon walked in and stole an iPad from like a 4-year-old that was sitting down waiting for his mom.
Oh my
That's pretty
God.
low too, right? Stealing from a 4-year-old an iPad, stealing from a church, you're pretty much bottom of the barrel.
The bad thing is these are still our countrymen. These are still people that live amongst us. And it's not like, you know, we're saying about how could such a terrible tragedy as such happen in Maine? Like, how could that happen up in rural Maine? Everywhere you go, there's bad people. There's good people and bad people every corner of this earth. The thing is that we can't just look at somebody and say, oh, that's a good guy or that's a bad guy. It's not until they take action and force us to react to that action that, you know, they reveal themselves as the bad guy. That's the whole like conundrum of it, is that if you don't have a means to defend yourself, you don't have a means to fight the bad guy when the bad guy appears, then what else can you do?
Cincinnati man shoots at 1-year-old boy, is shot by man with concealed carry permit. 62-year-old man with a gun, and each hand fired at 4 people, including a 1-year-old, before a civilian with a concealed carry permit returned fire and wounded the shooter.
So luckily there's a good guy with a gun to stop the maniac.
Yep.
The thing is, like, look at this scumbag. This dude shot a child, a 1-year-old. So if that guy with the CCW with his legally carried pistol, in the most unlikely of places to have a legally carried pistol, right? If he wouldn't have been there to stop that guy, how many other people would have died that day? Like, my big thing is, and this is a story that I repeat over and over and over, that regardless of what weapon is used by these people, by bad people, it doesn't change the fact that it's the person perpetuating the crime, right? Pat Rogers, you know, Pat Rogers is the guy that told me about this. One of the most terrible mass killings that ever occurred in this country was the Happy Land nightclub fire in New York City, where a dude went and bought a gallon of gasoline and a book of matches and burned, I believe it was 86 people to death in one place. He poured gasoline along the stairs of a nightclub that was upstairs and threw a match because his girlfriend, the coat check girl, broke up with him, and he was so upset and so angry he decided to burn 86 people to death with a gallon of gasoline, like $1.75. So it's like, you know, when there's evil in men's hearts, when people want to do bad things, you take all the guns in the world and throw them in the Marietta Trench. It's not going to change human nature. It's not going to change that bad guys are going to do bad things. And if the good people out there, the good men and women, if they're not at the ready, if they don't have the means, then we can't stop it.
You can now contribute to the Firearms Radio Network and This Week in Guns by shopping with our Amazon affiliate link. Simply click through the Amazon banners on thisweekinguns.com or bookmark firearmsradio.tv/Amazon to support pro-gun radio like This Week in Guns. We are to the full auto news segment, stories the real media won't talk about, and other crazy stuff. This is where each host will pick a story to call our own. Not too many to pick from this week, but who's ready to roll? John?
All right, I'm going.
Who's going? Billy. Go.
Go ahead, Billy.
So this video that's been going around about, we've seen this before. We saw a couple years ago, I forgot what network it was, Nightline or someone set up the self-defense in the classroom. If you armed a student, would they be able to respond to an active shooter situation? And of course, because they set up the whole scenario, it didn't work out, right? Apparently, the active shooter always seemed to know who the person was in the class that had the gun, et cetera, et cetera. So we have another video that's come out here by, I forgot what organization put this out, where it's using the simulator showing how cops respond to an active shooter situation, self-defense, and how a citizen who apparently almost has never held a gun before in their life would respond. And time and time again, the cop does the right thing, and the civilian ends up responding slowly or not shooting the person. And again, they set up this video so they can set the scenario to where the civilian doesn't perform at the level of the police officer. And when I'm watching this, only thing I seem to really be able to tell is that, wow, okay, so maybe people need to practice a little more with guns. It doesn't prove anything to me other than you're putting the gun in the hand of someone who probably doesn't already own one, and you're putting them in this situation, and of course they're not performing well. I mean, they've apparently never shot a gun before. So it doesn't prove anything. It's more anti-gun propaganda to show that we should only entrust our lives with the state, and that civilians probably shouldn't be carrying firearms. Did you guys watch the video?
I agree with you 100%, 100% on everything you just said. But that's like the great irony of this to me, is that we're saying, like, when you portray it where like only cops are responsible or trained enough to have firearms and to be able to exercise deadly force when the situation warrants. But then, like, these are usually the same people also saying, like, cops are all racist and bad guys and bullies. So, like, you're telling me that cops are all corrupt, evil, racist, bad guys, but you're also telling me cops are the only people that should have firearms. Like, I'm kind of confused by that. Right. Like that stance. I mean, it's usually the same person that'll say the one thing and then have the exact opposing view. They're conflicting their own point of view on it. But yeah, it's made to make your average Joe, your regular all-American gun owner, look like an incompetent idiot who can't be trusted with firearms. It's exactly what it is.
The one was hilarious. The one scenario where the woman didn't actually fire in the simulation, right? She's just standing there, and the text pops up on screen and says, "Woman didn't fire on intruders, therefore they didn't see her, and she lived."
What?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, so you just stand in the corner and pretend like they don't see you and hope for the best?
Just give them what they want and they won't hurt you.
It's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's the bad guys are T-Rexes. They only see movement.
Here's the thing. It's like if somebody breaks in your house, do you assume that they're only there to burglarize you? They're like, oh, they're forcing their way into my house just because they want to steal my TV and my Xbox or whatever, right? Like you don't know what the motive is behind that person. Maybe they're breaking into your house to rape you, right?
I don't if you don't fight back. Let's say, like, I think saying that people make assumptions when somebody goes into their house is kind of, we should update the term, I should say. I think we should start saying that there are no assumptions to be made. That person is in your house. They deserve to have their life taken for coming into your house unlawfully.
Exactly, right. But what I'm saying is that there's like this mentality that like just comply and give the bad guy what he wants and the bad guy will leave, right? He won't hurt you. There's this assumption that if you don't fight back, everything's going to be okay, when it's the exact opposite. Like it could go from the guy's just there to steal your TV and he thinks that the house is abandoned until he realizes that there's a young attractive woman there and he has the means, motive, and opportunity to now commit a completely different felony, and in my opinion, a much worse felony, which is rape and possibly murder as a result. If somebody's so brazen to kick in your door or put a gun in your face in the street to take your wallet, then what makes you think that they're a good enough person not to take your life or to do something worse than take your wallet or take your things. That's what I'm saying. It's like there's a lot of assumption on that side of the house that if you just comply, it's going to be okay.
Right.
But
Well, I didn't make they made the decision to pull a weapon on me or break into my house. I didn't make that decision. Right. So I can't assume anything other than this person made some decision to either pull a weapon on me or break into my house. I have to assume the worst.
You have
That's all there is. I have to assume the worst, and I have to meet force with equal or greater force.
Now,
right?
what I'll say to this though is that I don't agree with a lot of people's approach to buying firearms. Like, I know people that will buy a firearm, they'll shoot it once or twice. I'm like, hey, you should receive some professional training. There's a lot of good instructors out there. There's a lot of really good programs for you to become proficient with your firearm and to actually be able to protect yourself and your family if you need to, right? And they're like, no, I'm good. I got a gun. I know how to shoot it. I know how to be safe. I'm good, right? But the same individual will go buy a guitar and pay hundreds of dollars to have private guitar lessons. So my thing is, if I go buy a guitar tomorrow, does that make me a musician? Hell no. It makes me a dude that owns a guitar that can't play a single chord. It doesn't make me a musician just because I own it. So why is a firearm any different? If you buy a firearm, why not pursue higher education and better instruction? It boggles my mind how many people are willing to spend the cash on a firearm, but they're not willing to spend the money to learn how to properly use the weapon. So that if this event, something like this ever happens, somebody kicks in your door at 3 o'clock in the morning, or somebody goes to hurt your children in a parking lot, that you actually know how to counter that properly. It's a system. It's not, the gun itself is not the solution. There's a lot of things that go into this other than just the hardware. Mindset's one of the biggest parts of it. Being willing to fight for your life and the life of the people you love. You got to be willing.
Nate, you're up.
All right, so I just want to make sure that I'm not stealing John's thunder, because I really hope that he picks the one that I want him to pick. So, John, you're not going to talk about the new Michael Bay movie, are you?
No.
Okay, cool. Okay. I didn't think you were. I wanted to clear it with you, though.
No, I'm not.
You know, I like to bounce all my big decisions off you before. All right. So, Michael Bay, king of Hollywood action and explosions and all that, he's got a new movie coming out. The trailer's out there floating around. It's called 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, right? It's based off Mitchell Zhukov's book, 13 Hours, The Inside Account of What Really Happened in Benghazi. The film's coming out January 15th, 2016, right? But it's already, it's catching a lot of traction from what I can see. It's getting shared a lot, once again, on social media. It's got that main character dude from The Office playing like a complete badass. So that's
Jim from The Office.
Jim from The Office, you know.
He's got a tactical beard.
He's got a very nice beard that's giving mine a run for the money, and some cool guy guns. But more importantly, this is a story of what happened in Benghazi. I would hope that a lot of the people listening are aware of what happened in Benghazi, the tragedy that was Benghazi. One, it being avoidable. Two, that we could have had boots on the ground in support to save American lives, and that order was not given. That support was not given. And then the aftermath of Benghazi and what happened with that and how terribly it was handled. And I don't need to go down the whole Hillary Clinton route, but we can if you want to. To me, I'm surprised to see that this film is coming out. I really hope that Michael Bay just doesn't use it as an opportunity to have some firefights in Middle Eastern streets, but he actually uses it as a vessel to tell the story of what happened to those Americans that were murdered in that country. So I'm excited for this film. I really hope that it follows the timeline. I hope that it stays true to the narrative about what really happened. And really, I think it's going to be an important film. I also think that there's probably a little bit of a political message for this movie to be coming out right now, particularly with the elections coming up. There's a lot of controversy surrounding Benghazi and some of the players that are going to be running for office here. So I'm curious to see if this affects the election in any kind of way. So I'm stoked for it. I think it's pretty cool. I recommend you guys check the trailer out. It looks pretty decent.
Yeah, I think it does look pretty decent too. I'm looking
Trailer looked great.
forward to it. Yeah. John,
Yeah, the trailer did look great. I just think it's probably so far before the election. You know, you're talking 16 months before that. Probably, if it were next summer, it could probably have more of an impact. You know, depending. I haven't seen it, so I don't know if he even gets into the politics of it, or hopefully, he does address the fact that their calls for help were not answered.
Well, if you think about it, it'll be going to DVD right around that time. If it's in theaters in January, when do you think it would hit?
Oh, it's in theaters in January?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so DVD would be the following, that summer sometime. I just think our attention span is shorter and shorter with things nowadays, and I just see that window of opportunity to take advantage of those things is closing, unfortunately. And I guess we're yet to see exactly what angle, if any political angle, he takes in the film at all. So I think it'll be interesting to see it.
Yeah.
All right, John, what do you have?
So I want to talk about a new product that I caught wind of. I believe that the Gun Collective News, TGC News, was one of the first outlets to even talk about this thing. It's called the APS, Accurate Pistol System, and I believe the company is called USA One Shot, or the product. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Anyway, it is essentially a molded piece. They're calling it a dynamic pistol rest for Glock handguns. Essentially, it is some sort of adapter that you can put an adjustable stock on and use it to stabilize your Glock handgun. And the most important thing about this is the company is claiming that it is not an SBR. And when you look at this thing, you're like, no way in hell, this is definitely an SBR. Well, the most interesting thing to me is that when questioned about it, the company that released it said that the ATF said it doesn't attach to the gun, so it doesn't fall under our jurisdiction. The problem here is that this is the same ATF that claims that the simple act of taking a gun from here to here on your shoulder with a SIG pistol break, that redefines the gun. That redefines what you have in your hands. The simple act of putting it against your body is a redefinition. Now, my concern here is that the same thing will happen with this product, and if people buy into it, it's very expensive. It's $350 for this thing. So if people buy into it, suddenly we're going to have a bunch of criminals on our hands because the ATF is wishy-washy and doesn't make any what I've been preaching about this since we broke the news on Monday is that I think we need to see an ATF determination letter. And, again, they've said, well, the ATF won't give us one, and I don't believe that. I don't necessarily believe that they won't give them a determination letter. Have you guys seen this thing?
Yeah,
I saw pictures of it. I didn't look at the video though. I didn't see how it actually attaches. I was trying to understand it.
There's no way. There's no based off their decision, the flip flop on the SIG brace. I can't especially now they're going after things like smoke, flare launchers and stuff. I can't see them letting this stand. I can't see them not letting the company sell a couple thousand of them before they say, no.
Yeah, I totally agree. Billy, so it's essentially just like a plastic hand that kind of sits and you just drop the gun into it and hold it in with your other hand. So it's just an addition to have a stock coming off the back to assist you in utilizing a handgun at distance. There's a whole story behind
it. Doesn't physically attach to the gun?
Of course, yes, and they've shown video. This company has released video of it like not attaching. They're like trying to attach it, putting it in this thing, and it will not attach.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how the ATF could say that's an SBR then. I mean, if
right, and that's what they're saying. That's exactly what the company is saying, and that's why this is so interesting, is because we all know what the ATF does. I want this product to come out and not be an SBR. I think that would be great, but I think the ATF is going to screw the pooch here and really come back and go back on their word and suddenly make a bunch of people criminals if this gets sold.
What's just so funny is all this minutia with all these, reading into the NFA. It's hilarious how anti-gun people don't understand all of this, right?
Right.
On how close you are to committing a felony is just ludicrous.
Most people that own Class 3 weapons know more about firearms law than your average cop does. So that you can stay within the letter of law from state to state, just like a bunch of invisible lines that you could potentially go over where you're 100% legal, model citizen, you cross that imaginary line, i.e. the state line in your car on a highway, and now you're behind enemy lines, you're committing a felony, or you're committing a crime of some sort. And the circumvent all the potential things that can go drastically wrong. Like that poor woman that drove across the bridge down in Philadelphia, a CCW, a concealed carry weapon permit holder in Pennsylvania, 100% legal, wonderful person, goes over a bridge accidentally, needs to turn around and get out of New Jersey, and in that time, she's arrested. And she had to get a pardon from the governor to avoid jail time. Like how ridiculous our laws are. And the fact that there's conflicting laws. There's laws, one law will say this is okay, and another law will say, no, that's not okay, so which law do you follow? Which one do you believe? And then the fact that the ATF gets to arbitrarily make up the law as they go, and that there's no elected officials whatsoever at the ATF. That it's just you get hired for the job and you get to make law. That's cool.
Yeah, it's one of those government agencies that has zero checks and balances.
Like think about it, like Adam Kraut had to go to school and pass the bar exam to be able to be involved in law. But you can be a federal agent and get hired by the ATF. You get transferred from the DEA, and now you're actively taking part in making new laws.
You're writing letters that say we will or won't prosecute you for shouldering a AR pistol.
Well, and then 3 months later, reversing your stance on that for no apparent reason.
Like, how many actual lawyers work for the ATF? I would like to know that information.
I'm not sure I want to go down that rabbit hole.
The thing is, not all ATF. I'd like to end this on this. Like, I've met a lot of ATF agents, and a lot of them are actually pro-gun guys. They're gun owners themselves. They're not bad people. What I'm saying is, my complaint's not against individual agents. A lot of them are extremely pro-Second Amendment. A lot of them are disgusted with their own branch, like their own department. They want change as much as we do. The problem with the ATF is not the ATF agents, it's the organization itself. It's the department in its entirety and the agenda that's pressed on that department.
Repeal the NFA, close down the ATF. That's my stance.
Yep.
I'm down for it.
I fully support that.
Sounds like a plan. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with here. There's, so many. I just found a few and threw them in here. Like, man arrested for assault with venomous snake. There's a Chinese cop that fires his gun in the air as suspect bites his leg. That one's pretty good.
I like the snake one. Did snakes fall under the ATF?
I like the one about the tracking point that can be hacked now.
Right. Well, John, I'll let you cover that if you want. I think I'm going to go with man hides unloaded pistol and basketball and gives it to recruiters for self-defense. So this guy, Shreveport, Louisiana, he walks into a military recruitment center Tuesday afternoon with an uninflated basketball, sets it down on the desk, and says, "Here, I have something you might need," and walks out. So He left them a handgun inside an uninflated basketball meant to serve as protection for the recruiting office. So,
why was it unloaded? What good is that to anybody?
Right.
That's like giving somebody a car with no gas in it.
So he was arrested a short time later, appeared very upset about the military shooting. Police described him as non-threatening and bearing good intentions.
What state was this in? Why was he arrested?
Louisiana.
That's a pretty pro-gun state.
Yeah, like what?
What was the charge?
What was the charge? I mean, I don't know if they have pistol registration or not, but I mean, can you not give someone a pistol if they're both, assuming he was legal to own and the person he handed it to was legal to receive it?
Well, I mean, if that military recruitment center was federal property, that would be a problem.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Yeah, but I don't think it falls under recruitment centers. Don't fall under the same legality as like federal buildings. I think it's more or less it's a gun-free zone, kind of like, because most of those recruitment centers are like in shopping malls, and like the property isn't owned by the government.
Well, I mean, as somebody that worked in a recruiting center, it does fall under, it's treated the same as military installation. I mean, it's kind of the same as like you're not allowed to carry a gun in the post office. It's still a federal regulation. So like in the military regulation for the Marine Corps, it's written like believe me, I wanted to have my pistol when I was on recruiting duty, but I wasn't allowed to. Now, I take 15 steps outside the recruiting center and I'm in public domain. I'm out at the parking lot. You know, I'd have my pistol in the car. I just couldn't have it in the office because of that regulation. I'd be violating federal law and be punishable under the UCMJ by it. I thought it was nonsense too, but.
All right, John, you want to touch on the tracking point hack?
So I'll make this really, really short. There's a conference that happens, I believe, every year called Black Hat. It is a hacking conference. And apparently 2 people found a way to hack tracking point rifles, which run Linux and Android and have their own Wi-Fi networks. So these things can apparently be remotely hacked, which I find even more hilarious because these rifles are super, super expensive. The only thing is, I know a lot of people are going to think, oh, well, now we can control these guns, you know, and shoot people remotely, and that's not the case. You can either disable it or choose a new target. Somebody still has to pull the trigger on these guns. So that's not.
Oh my dude! It's like Stephen King predicted with Maximum Overdrive. But hey, I thought Tracking Point went out of business anyway.
They are going through restructuring right now, and they laid off a bunch of people, and they're not shipping rifles.
Yeah, I don't think they sold too many of those crazy, insane rifles that required batteries. So, I mean, to me, like, good for the Black Hat guys that they figured out how to crack a rifle that nobody has.
Yeah, all 10 of them out there.
Yeah.
According to this article, there's about 1,000 of them out there, and that's I'm pretty sure that's between all models because they've got, you know, the $50-some thousand one or whatever, the high-end 338s, all the way down to the ARs.
It's 1,000 museums.
Yeah. How many of those are demo units?
I don't know.
So, if you'd like to support Pro Gun Radio like This Week in Guns, you can head on over to patreon.com/week. That's how you can crowdfund the show by pledging your support $1 to $5 per episode. And we also have patreon.com/FRN if you'd like to support the network as a whole. Patriot Patch Company makes this episode possible. Head on over, pre-order the I'm Your Huckleberry patch, which I was told was historically inaccurate, but we were still making it.
Why is it inaccurate?
Somebody cared enough to write you an email and tell you it was historically inaccurate?
Yep.
Oh, that's like king of the nerds right there. Can you read the email out loud for us, please? I would love to hear this.
I'd have to dig it out maybe after the show. Patriotpatch.co. Check it out. And I did have a listener last week say that he really wished we'd have a after-show hangout that listeners could come hang out with us. And I said, no, you don't.
No, that's no.
Well, that brings us to what do you guys got going on? Nate, what's going on?
I mean, I've had a pretty busy summer. My invention, the grip stop, is back in stock and selling from a bunch of different distributors, so I'm very happy about that. Grip stops everywhere. Awesome. So you can follow me on Instagram if you want to see what the grip stop's all about. It's just grip stop, one word, right? So that's going along pretty well.
Well, wait just a second. Where can I link people to in the show notes if they want to go buy one?
F3Tactical.com, RockwellTactical.com. They carry them Weapon Outfitters, Operation Parts. I mean, there's a bunch of people. It's the B5 Grip Stop is what it's called. So there's this thing called Google we have now. You type in the word grip stop.
Make it super easy and put a direct link in the show notes.
So I mean, like there's no shortage of guys carrying them. I mean, like
yeah, I bought 2 of them the other day actually.
So thanks, John. I owe you a beer. But yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of places to get it. So that's moving along pretty well. I've been traveling quite a bit. I'm getting ready to go out to Oregon here in like a week. I'm gonna go out there for a week and hang out with some really cool gun people out there. So I'm looking forward to that trip. So yeah, I mean, just staying busy.
Very cool. And writing some really awesome articles on Breach Bang Clear, one about Patriot Patch Company. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, there's this new company called Patriot Patch out there. I'm pretty sure Breach Bang Clear put an article up today about that company.
I love Jason from that company. He's great.
He's a good dude. He's a good dude.
All right, John, what's going on? Gun Collective, patent media consultant?
All the things are going on. So I've talked about this before. We are now on full30.com. If you guys out there listening love gun videos, you need to go check that out. Full30 is a community of gun content creators by gun content creators. It was made by some of the coolest guys in our sector of the industry, and it's really, really cool. There's a lot of great content on there. We're pumping out shows every single week on Monday evenings. We release TGC News throughout the week. There's other content coming out, and the new show is going really, really well. People are really digging it. We've, I don't want to say too much, but we've done something really special. I think I don't think anybody else out there has done anything like what we're doing for Firearms News in video format. So it's really exciting. You know, there were a lot of really, really good. Like, this is a great podcast for Firearms News, right? There's great blogs for Firearms News. There was not somebody doing great Firearms News in the video sector, and as far as I'm concerned, we're doing a pretty good job of that. So you definitely need to check us out at The Gun Collective. You can pop that into Google and all that. You can also check out TGC News, which is our weekly news show. I would appreciate if you guys did that. It'd be huge.
Full30.com, right?
Yeah, full30.com is the site that that's. Go ahead.
Is that legal in all 50 states?
Maybe not legal in California. I'm not sure.
Yeah, not in Los Angeles. Nothing.
High capacity gun content.
Can't have 30-ounce pops. Can't have 30-round mags. So Billy, what's going on?
I'm working on some exciting stuff that I'm unfortunately not ready to announce yet. But I've been busy working on a few things. I've been taking a break from the social media thing. So any of the people out there that follow Amidst the Noise, just to let you know, I am alive, and I have not been taken prisoner by any anti-gunners or anybody else out there. But I will be back sometime on there. I'm just taking a break, and you'll definitely see me before the elections build up here towards the end of this year, next year. and I'll have a lot of exciting things to announce.
Very cool. Well, you're so cryptic.
I know. I'm sorry.
Because you're working on like some physical products, right? Most people don't know you for that.
Right, with my company Boxer Tactical, which a lot of people that know me as Amidst the Noise don't know that Boxer Tactical is my company and has been well before I ever started the, my YouTube videos Amidst the Noise. So, we're doing some exciting things over there. And we're going to have a lot of new products to launch here towards the end of this year and beginning of next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. We can't wait to talk about those. Looking forward to it. So that about wraps up our show this week. You can leave your feedback by commenting on the bottom of this YouTube video or go to thisweekinguns.com/128. Leave us that iTunes review, and don't forget to contribute by shopping our Amazon affiliate link. Well, thank you, Nate.
Always great to be back on. Thanks for having me there, Jake.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
No. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. Thank you, Billy.
Hey, thanks, Jake. Appreciate you having me.
And that's a wrap, and we'll see you next week.